Hey everyone, my name is Martin Hochel. I work as principal software engineer for a company called Embed IT in Prague, Czech Republic. And besides that, I'm also Google developer expert for the web. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Martin_Hotel, double L. And you can follow me also on GitHub. Besides daily job, I'm running the biggest JavaScript meetup in Prague. It's called NG Party. By the way, the NG stands for next generation. You see what I did there? No? I'm also author of NG Metadata, the best AngularJS yet. And I'm core member of Skate.js, a reactive library for writing web components. And when I'm not geeking out, you can find me outside, surfing, snowboarding, skateboarding, or wakeboarding. All right, enough about me. So this is Angular Meetup. And are you prepared to have a good fight against React and Angular? Yes? No? I have to disappoint you, because fight leads to the Twitter ends and frame wars. So we won't fight during this talk. Instead, we can be friends. We can leverage the knowledge of other ecosystems and use it for our own benefit and better apps. Question is, how to do this, right? How to do this? Well, we need to take a particular look at three categories that we are dealing with by our daily jobs. And those categories are tools, like what tools are we using for achieving our goals. Second category is architecture, how we build our apps with those tools. And last but not least, we need to take a very close look at libraries that we are using and that we can leverage from other ecosystems. As a baseline for describing all those categories, we'll be using Angular CLI, which is a, let's say, industry standard for booting up new Angular apps. And you can install it via npx. I'm not using npm install global because global things are bad for your system and maybe for your life as well. So you can use npx and don't pollute your system. So let's take a look what CLI brings us by default in the terms of those three categories, right? So from libraries perspective, well, nothing surprising. There is Angular and RxJS. From architecture perspective, we can build our apps how we want. We can go fully with a component-driven development or use service-oriented architecture or some other state management principles, but that's it. And from the tooling perspective, CLI comes with Webpack, a module bundler. Then we got Protractor with Selenium for end-to-end tests, and Karma and Jasmine for unit testing. And last but not least, we got the best thing that ever happened to JavaScript, TypeScript, with tools for static analysis like TSLint and Codalyzer. So far, so good. Before continuing with this talk, I have to apologize because I will be introducing a lot of tombstones just to give a favor to Angular team what they did on NG Europe in 2015, I don't know, how they tombstone all the AngularJS features. Oh. So sorry about that, but I just had to do it. All right. Let's take a look about tools, what we got. Let's start pretty easy with this. And let's briefly talk about task runners and package managers that we are using with Angular and other apps. So probably most of you are using NPM, right? Who's using NPM? Hands up. Yeah, so like 99% of the audience. But we can do better. We can use Yarn, which is also a package manager and task runner, which is much faster than NPM and more reliable. Just why should you use Yarn, right? I have a few questions for you. How would you execute locally installed NPM package from your terminal with NPM or whatever? Any suggestions?
Yeah, you can make an NPM script and then execute the script.
Yeah, that's the one way, but if you don't want to introduce npm script, you need to write this gibberish, right? With yarn, you can just execute yarn and the binary, and it will find the binary file in the node packages, node modules, and it will execute, which is super convenient. Next question, how would you execute custom npm script? Yeah, exactly. npm run e2e, for instance, custom script, right? With yarn, we can skip the run and be more lazy. Nice, right? Exactly. Okay, and last thing, how would you pass custom arguments to existing npm script? Yes. You need to terminate the script to tell it, okay, this is it, and now accept these arguments. This is super inconvenient, especially if you are writing long scripts in your package.json. So again, with yarn, you just run it without terminating.
What happens if you have TSC script?
I don't know. Good questions. Here's a t-shirt. So yeah, it's more convenient to use like for daily tasks and executing your scripts, just playing around. And last but not least, it has great CLI tool for upgrading your packages. So I can execute, and I have this beautiful command line tool for checking the packages that can be upgraded, and yeah, I don't have to do it manually, or I don't know how you upgrade packages. Okay, that was just some intro. What about formatting? So again, Angular CLI gives us TS-lint with Codalyzer. So you can execute lint with fix, and it will kind of reformat and fix your linting errors in your code base. So these linters have two rules, formatting rules and code quality rules. But if you think this is okay to get bugged by missing some spaces or semicolons in your editor, you're fundamentally wrong. And because of that, TS-lint is not the right tool for the right job in terms of formatting. So we need to introduce our first tombstone. So what should we use for formatting? Well, we can use Prettier, a library from Facebook, an open source community. And you can install it pretty easily just by adding as a development dependency, and by executing Prettier with the glow pattern and write, all your code base will be reformatted. And it's blazingly fast. And did I mention the whole Facebook is using Prettier to cover their code base? You don't have to ever argue with your colleague during code review, like, hey man, this space. This is not the end of the story, because as I said, there are some formatting rules in TS-lint. So how to mitigate those to not have Prettier in clash with linter. Thanks to the open source, we have some package for that. In particular, TS-lint config Prettier. So you will just extend your TS-lint configuration rules with this package, and then we can execute a binary which will expose those rules that are in conflict with the Prettier. And still you have to manually delete those, so I see great PR opportunity to automate this thing. Do a PR. All right. I don't know how about you, but I really hate doing things manually and all the time, like running the formatters and stuff. Instead, we can automate things and let's robots do the work. Again, we can use two particular packages outside the Angular ecosystem, lint-staged and Husky. So lint-staged needs some configuration, and then we can create new npm script with this particular word, pre-commit, which is a git hook, kinda, right? So Husky registers these scripts to real git hooks, and then when we will start executing a commit, it will be executed, and Husky will run lint-stage binary, and lint-stage binary will find our config and execute those two tasks. So we'll be running linter and formatter, and also we will add those formatted files to the Git, so we don't have to do them manually, and everything will be formatted and properly styled in that particular commit, which is awesome. Okay, let's switch to some more serious topic, unit testing. Who writes unit tests? Hands up. All right, those who didn't raise their hand, they are the doors. I'm just kidding, but seriously, unit tests are important. So again, CLI comes with Karma, the test runner, and Jasmine, the assertion library, and spy library. But I don't know what's your experience with those tools. I don't really like those. You need to do a lot of configuration to make Karma run, and it's sometimes very flaky, it's slow, debugging is not very convenient, and there are other reasons, but we need to introduce another tombstone for Jasmine and Karma with Angular. Sorry. Instead, we can use something much better and more reliable. Just is complete testing solution from Facebook and open source community. It's super easy to set up, it's super fast, it has very nice tooling ecosystem, and it introduces new type of testing. It's called snapshot testing. Again, to add it to your existing CLI, you just have to install Jest and just preset Angular, which handles all that Angular setup for testbed and zones and stuff, you know. Talking about the speed, let's see some numbers, shall we? So let's say we will use traditional Karma, which is run against real browser Chrome at particular tests. And it took 15 seconds, which is great. Maybe. We can do much better. We can use some headless browser, Phantom, which is dead now, but whatever. So it's only 30 seconds. So fast, right? Yeah. Awesome. Or we can use Jest, which takes 5 seconds. How is that possible? Well, Jest runs against Node and against JSDOM, which is a virtual representation of browser within Node. And it runs in parallel, and it has very efficient caching mechanisms. What about the snapshots? So this is traditional test, like we are used to, right? By the way, the syntax with Jest is the same, or very similar like with Jasmine. So nothing new to learn on your side. And we have to use this particular matcher to match snapshot in your test. And what this will do, it will physically save a file, snapshot file on the disk with the particular state of a component in that moment. And then when someone changes the component, or if some logic changes, we are getting this beautiful diff when I can exactly see what happened and what changed. This is really awesome. I don't know about you, but I really hate to write manually query selectors to check some node or classes. It doesn't make any sense. So with JSON snapshots, this is easy peasy.
How to take the snapshot?
Sorry?
How to take the snapshot?
As I showcased, you just execute this assertion. The fixture is your component, and you use to match snapshot, and that's it. And it will save physically the snapshot.
The snapshot to compare against.
You need to add the snapshot to the version control system,
Right.
and so it's physically there in your Git, and then it compares the outputs.
Yeah, but he asks how to take the initial snapshot. Right.
With this test, initially the logic of just this: if it finds their snapshot, it will compare. And if there's no snapshot, it will initially save the initial snapshot. So that's how. But we will have time for questions after the talk. So. Sorry. And last but not least, Jest comes with interactive CLI mode. So I can run the test in the watch mode, and I can filter just to run some subset of the test, let's say some pizzas related test. and it'll execute. And let's say we want to run some tests just from components. And it executes all tests from components. And we can go back to the initial screen and run just the whole suite by pressing A. Simple as that. And Jest covers much more topics, not just those. It has very powerful mocking features. You can even mock ES6 modules, which I don't recommend. Mocking modules is kind of cone smell. Use dependency injection, of course. It has zero setup for code coverage. It just works. It's highly pluggable. You can use it with Puppeteer for executing end-to-end tests, if you please. And it has large ecosystems with a lot of plugins. Okay, we will stick with testing for a while. Let's talk about end-to-end testing. Again, the same question. Who writes end-to-end tests? Okay, like 20% of the audience. And who enjoys writing end-to-end tests? One guy, yeah. Exactly. So CLI comes with Protractor, which uses under the hood Selenium. When I heard Selenium, I want to fight someone. Not just because it's kind of old technology, it's again not very reliable, flaky, the selectors are not matched properly, and many other reasons why I really don't like it. And let's face it, it's 2018 and we have much better tools. So we need to introduce another tombstone. And I have good news for you. There is ultimate cure for your end-to-end test sickness. And it's called Test Cafe. It's a pure Node.js tool, which is super reliable and super fast. We are using it for the last 9 months and really enjoying it a lot. Like, I want to be again developer in test. No. So how to add it to Angular CLI? You just install Test Cafe and Test Cafe Live, which is watch mode, let's say. And that's it. No configuration. You can just execute Test Cafe against Chrome or any other browser that you want, and it just works. And let's see how it works in a real life. So here is some pizza app for creating and managing pizzas, right? So let's run the test. Right, it was super fast. Wow. Okay, let's slow down the test. We can do that. Okay, and I'm pressing save, and automatically it reruns the test suite. So I'm creating pizza, I'm putting the name, create a pizza, I'm going back to the details, then I'm going back to the pizza, and I delete the pizza to just clean after myself the test, right? Okay, we can add some toppings, for sure, because pizza without toppings, boring. Again, I hit save, and the test is again rerun. So the same name, this time with some toppings. Bacon. Yep, bacon. We create a pizza, we go back, again to the created pizza detail, we delete, and that's it. And just comment out this speed limitation to see the test in the real life, how fast it is. Again, I press save, and the test is rerun. Whoops, yep, that's it. It's super fast. And writing tests like this, it's amazing. So as a recap, end-to-end testing with Test Cafe, it's really reliable. It's just pure Node.js, no plugins in the browsers, no Java and stuff. It's cross-platform. I'm a Mac user, but I also use Windows, and Test Cafe even works on subsystem Linux on Windows. Amazing. It's cross-browser. It works with continuous integration. And did I mention it supports TypeScript? Yep, it does. Okay, next topic. How do you develop components in isolation, or how do you do component redevelopment? Or maybe another question, how do you create style guides of your component catalog with Angular? No one?
We built a custom app.
Custom app. Okay, waste of time. I'm just kidding. You can use Storybook. Storybook was initially pure React solution, but as of today, it's framework agnostic. So you can use it with React, with Angular, Vue, web components, any other framework that may come. I hope there is no other framework coming around. So it generates the whole UI of your stories, and you can just browse your components in particular states. It even renders the whole app, because the root app is just another component, and we can play live with the rendering of a component. Let's say I change the name to my real name. Yep, that's my name. I get the feedback and I set the real age. I'm sold. And it even supports non-primitive data like objects. So we have some fruits, which is a select box. Let's change to banana and change some date. So this is really revolutionary tool for writing your components and to showcase this, because you can deploy this and it's awesome documentation for your consumers, right? And again, how to add it to existing Angular CLI? You just execute npx storybook CLI. And how it works in real life? Just like this. It will take for a while, so you can start making a coffee early in the morning. So we'll fetch some packages, dependencies. Come on, come on. Then it discovers that we are using Angular app, and everything is set up for us. Magic, right? This is developer experience at its best. I don't have to do anything. I just run the CLI, it's there, and I can immediately start writing my stories. Amazing. What is a story? It looks very similar to unit tests. So you need to define the story for a component. It's kind of like describe block in unit test. And then you're just adding those particular states of your component that you want to render on the page. So it's like a it block in your unit test. And you're using traditional templates with all the familiar Angular logic and syntax. And last but not least, you can provide the data to those components. Simple as that. So as the end game, your component folder looks like this. It has encapsulated styles, tests, stories, implementation, and snapshots, if you are using snapshots with Jest, of course. Okay, that was about tooling. What about architecture? Let's take a quick look at the components architecture in both React and Angular. All right. So basic building blocks of both React and Angular is component, just the syntax is different. Also, we can enhance the components with new behaviors. React uses a more functional approach with higher components, or let's say factory functions, and Angular has directives. But the principle is again the same. React uses render, so inline rendering with JSX. We can use the same with Angular, with inline templates, which I prefer, by the way. What about CSS? Up to you. You can use both inline or external. Both technologies support the same options. And last but not least, which is in my opinion very, very important in designing your components, are immutable props. So React has immutable props by default. So if you don't change the reference of the prop, the component won't re-render. And we can turn this on in Angular as well with onPush. So when we took a look, we're just using different syntax, but the principles are the same. So you learn things once and use with anything, which is great. I also want to mention stateful stateless component architecture, but I'm not going to go into details. There are billions of articles on the internet. I highly recommend the one from Dan Abramov. What about state of our applications? Again, let's take a look at both React and Angular. Well, with React, we have this state, which is a local stateful component. We have the same, kind of the same with Angular. We have the state of the instance of component or directive. This is great for managing some local UI, but not for the whole application state. For that, we can use dependency injection, which is hierarchical, both in React and in Angular. We have context API or services in Angular. Or even better, we can use Flux architecture, for, in our case, Redux. And let's be honest, this is the only type of architecture that really decouples the state from your framework. And literally, we can write the same code and reuse it with any framework, because with Flux, Redux, your framework is just a renderer and tool for hydrating the data. So that was state. What about libraries? Speaking about state previously, you're probably familiar with NGRX store, right? But NGRX store is again tightly coupled to Angular. You cannot use it with anything else, which is kind of sad. But you can use standard Redux with Angular Redux bindings and leverage the whole ecosystem of middlewares that exist in React, Angular, you name it. Also, for writing efficient selectors and encapsulating your state structure, you can use reselect for leveraging efficient selectors. Again, all of this is encapsulated with NGRX store, but it's tightly coupled to Angular, which depends on your use case. But we are using React and Angular, and we cannot allow to use just one thing. So we are using this kind of type of tools to leverage and reuse. What about handling side effects? Again, there is NGRX /effects, which uses this effects type of thingy. But we can use Redux Observable, which is just a middleware. It's agnostic, so I can use it with pure Redux. And it uses RxJS under the hood. And what is that epic? So here is traditional one-way data flow, right? I have a component, it emits action, action goes to reducer, reducer emits new state, and component re-renders. So then there is epic. And after all reducers are done, the stream of actions flows to the epic, and epic hooks to particular types of actions and executes some side effect. In our case, it's most of the time API call to our server. And when we get response or reject, or with error, we just emit a new type of action to our pipeline. And again, that action travels to all the reducers, and then we are again back to our one-way data flow with Redux. So epics is just actions in and actions out, powered by RxJS. Last type of libraries that we can reuse, this is kind of controversial, okay? You can use Axios, which is $HTTP service taken from AngularJS and rewritten to be able to reuse with any particular technology. So you can use Axios with Vue, React, or Angular, and it's promise-based. I don't know about you, but I don't really need the power of observables when I'm using Redux Observable or NGRX effect for managing the state, because that Rx power is baked there. So I'm using just Axios for fetching the data or writing interceptors. And if you're using Axios and promise-based APIs, even your effects or epics will be simpler. So you don't have to pipe, you just do traditional then catch with promises. So we are at the end. What did we learn today? We introduced some tombstones for existing standards shipped with Angular, and we learned that we don't have to be afraid, and we can look outside of our particular environment, in our case Angular, and learn from other ecosystems, even leverage those ecosystems for our benefit. We introduce better CLI defaults from libraries perspective, old good Redux, Redux Observable, Axios for API calls. From the architecture, reactive one-way data flow with Redux, and from the tooling, Prettier, Jest for unit testing, Storybook for writing or catalogs and components, Test Cafe for reliable and fast end-to-end testing, and that's it. I've also written blog posts about this in greater detail. You can check it out on my Medium blog. I prepared also Starter with all these tools and an example app. So you can really see that I wasn't just talking, but it really works. And last but not least, I prepare custom schematics for CLI. It's under my npm scope name, Martin_Hotel schematics. And you can boot new app with my schematics. Like this. ng-new, my app. I will use my custom collection of schematics. I type so slowly. And it will create the standard Angular app with those better tools that I showcased today. So definitely check it out. I will introduce more schematics, like to introduce Jest to existing code base with refactoring, because Jasmine uses some different spies than Jest. So all of this is in pipeline after Angular CLI 6 will be released. So definitely take a closer look at this if you're interested. And in the end, as I said, we don't have to fight and hate on other communities or on other technologies. Instead, we can learn and we can profit. With that said, thanks for inviting, and thank you very much for your attention.